Wine, treasured by the Greeks and exported throughout the Roman Empire. Over the centuries, the industry has expanded and innovation has set new standards for production. But even today, the art of wine, its essence, lies in the process. The species of grape which is proven best for the production of wine is called Vitis vinifera, which means literally the wine grape. Most wine grapes are grown in two belts around the globe, between 30 and 50 degrees latitude, north and south. These regions have the temperate climate and moderate rainfall the grapes need to flourish.
The older the vine, the better the wine.
The longer a vine is in the ground, the more extensive a root system it can develop. And what happens is the deeper and more extensive that root system is, the more access the vine has to other things in the soil.
In late spring, the growth cycle begins with flowering. Most grapevines are self-pollinating, containing both male and female parts. The spraying of fungicides, herbicides, and pesticides are necessary to control disease and pests. Their use, however, must be discontinued well before the harvest. There is an alternative, however, used in virtually all parts of the wine world. Some growers employ organic viticultural practices to combat pests and disease.
Well, what organic means in the production of wine, making wine, is that in our grape growing, we're not using any synthetic chemicals, no pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. The whole approach is prevention. So in the case of an insect population, we plant things between the grapes, daikon radish, bell beans, oats, all kinds of things that provide nectar, that attract predatory insects, and that keeps our insect populations down.
As autumn approaches, the grapes begin to ripen, changing from the hard green berries to yellow-green, pink, and soft blue colors of ripe grapes. This transitional stage, called veraison, is a time when more sugar will be produced and stored within the berries. Unlike some other fruits, grapes will not continue to ripen once they're picked from the vine. Selecting the right moment to harvest is the most critical decision in the grower's year. When the sugars in the grape have reached their peak, the harvest can begin. For many producers, the best method for selecting and picking grapes is manual harvesting, a process as old as winemaking itself. Crews of pickers will move from row to row, cutting grape bunches off the vine with shears. But when it comes to the immense vineyards necessary for large-scale production, mechanical harvesters are unmatched in efficiency. The mechanical harvester has replaced hand-picking in the majority of the world's vineyards today. These machines straddle the rows of vines, gently shaking the grapes loose. Their hoppers are then emptied into bins for transport to the wineries. The winemaker will now transform the fruit through vinification into finished wine. Now begins the process of extracting the sweet juice and flavor compounds from the grape. First, the stalks are removed by passing through a crusher destemmer that also lightly cracks the skin of the grapes. Unlike the reds, white wine grapes are transferred directly to a wine press. Exerting gradual pressure on the grapes, the press separates the liquid from the solid matter. The resulting liquid is called the must, containing water, sugar, acids, and flavor compounds. The must is pumped into tanks for fermentation. The tanks are made from a variety of materials, ranging from stainless steel to traditional wood to concrete. They are usually geared to the size of a winery's production, ranging from giant industrial containers to the small vats housed within boutique wineries. Here, the must starts to ferment. Cultured yeast is added, which more efficiently converts the sugars into alcohol. Fermentation of white wine takes place at cooler temperatures than red, and the process can last for up to 3 weeks. The cooler temperatures within the tanks aid in preserving the delicate fruit flavors that distinguish white wines. But these tanks can also be used for extreme cooling, in a process called cold stabilization. The temperature inside the tank drops well below zero to crystallize the naturally occurring tartaric acid onto the tank walls. If left in the bottle, these harmless crystals, sometimes called wine diamonds, could be perceived as a quality defect. An interesting fact is that the juice from most grapes, even red grapes, is white. For this reason, white wines can be made from red grapes. Champagne is a good example. Champagne is a blended wine, usually made from Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay grapes. But how is red wine made from white juice?
Where does all the color come from?
All the color is in the skins and about 95% of the flavonoids. And when you ferment it after 2 or 3 days, the color from the skins go into the wine and you have a red wine.
The essential difference in the making of red wine is that the must ferments on its own skins to extract pigment, tannins, and flavor compounds. As with whites, red wine making begins with the grapes passing through a crusher destemming. The grapes are not pressed though. Instead, both skins and juices are pumped into a vessel together for fermentation. Cultured yeasts may also be added to red wine to control the process and to produce specific flavor characteristics. The fermentation of red wine ranges from 2 to 14 days. But the biggest difference is the extraction of color, flavor, and tannins from the skins. Called maceration, the longer the skins are left to soak in their must, the more intense the wine will become. As red grapes ferment, their skins rise to the top, forming a cap or crust. Traditionally, the cap is frequently punched down, extracting more from the skins. Alternately, in a process called pumping over, wine will be drawn from the bottom of the tank and pumped over the skins to achieve the same results. When the winemaker is satisfied with the color and concentration of the wine, the liquid, now called free-run wine, is separated from the skins in the tank. The skins and grape pulp are removed by hand and transferred to the press where the skins are squeezed under high pressure to extract the remaining liquid. This concentrated wine, called press wine, may be blended back to achieve the desired balance. With the alcoholic fermentation complete, the juice has been converted to wine. But the winemaker's work is far from over. The acid content of any wine must be in balance. At this point, many wines go through another phase called malolactic fermentation. This is especially important for red wines from cooler climates, and even white wines like Chardonnay.
Malolactic fermentation it's a conversion with bacteria as the catalyst for it that converts malic acid to lactic acid. Lactic is a weaker acid and provides then a softer effect in the mouth. Most reds you want to be softer in the mouth, a little richer. Some whites, some Chardonnays. But on the other hand, some whites like Riesling, you want to avoid the malolactic fermentation because it creates more complexity. And one of the great things about Riesling is the purity of the fruit.
Now the aging process begins, where the wine's final flavors will begin to transform and develop. Aging periods can vary from 6 months to several years and may include treatment in new wooden barrels used to impart flavors, usually from French or American oak.
Yeah, everything down here is 100% French oak. Actually,
the choice to use new oak barrels to add extra dimensions of flavor to the wine is a personal one on the part of the winemaker. And if they decide to do so, the country of origin and even the forest the wood comes from will make a significant difference in the wine. The barrels are toasted inside to caramelize the wood, adding a toasted or even smoky flavor to the wine. American oak tends to add stronger flavors than French, and the differences are dramatic, even with the same wine.
I want to taste the place where the grapes were grown rather than the container in which they were aged.
As wine ages in the barrel, sediments are produced and the wine becomes cloudy. The sediment consists mainly of dead yeast cells, called lees, along with tannin and grape fragments. The winemaker removes these deposits through a process called clarification. Here, A fining agent, like egg whites, is deposited into the wine barrel to capture the suspended particles. The heavier solids then fall to the bottom of the barrel, and the clear wine is carefully removed and transferred to a clean vessel in a process called racking. The most efficient method of removing unwanted particles is filtration, and the wine may undergo several stages of refinement. Each time, the wine is pumped through porous materials, trapping solids in the filter membranes. These sediments are discarded, leaving the wine clear and free of deposits. Every wine has its own character, a unique personality based on varietal type, the vineyard location, and the vintage year. But these subtle variations can challenge a winemaker who's expected to deliver consistent wine styles from one year to the next. In a process called blending, the winemaker will combine wines from different vineyards or grape varieties to achieve a consistent complementary blend. When the winemaker is satisfied with the final wine, it is bottled, sealed, labeled, and packaged for shipment, often across the globe. When it arrives at the consumer's table, the vast majority of wine is fully developed and ready to be enjoyed. However, the finest wines are often returned to the cellar after bottling and locked away for further aging. This maturation process allows the wine's flavors to transform and develop further, and with some reds, the harsh tannins to soften. The greatest wines may be cellared for decades before they reach their peak.